We continue on our Elevate journey with a presentation from Karin Weiri.
Hello, Daytona. Are you feeling elevated yet? All right, good. You getting ready to get a little more elevated? Good, because today I'm here to tell you a little story about my life that got me onto my life purpose. Go ahead and hit it. When I was 5 years old, I experienced the greatest loss in my life. My big, warm, loving teddy bear of a dad died. 6 months later, my mother decided that we needed to move from Houston, Texas to Denmark. Being that she was legally blind, that was a better idea because we did fare better there. Public transportation is plentiful, and so are social services. But for me, what that meant was that in one fell swoop, I lost everything. Children are resilient, but that doesn't mean that these kinds of experiences don't leave their indelible marks. Growing up, I was depressed, and I developed a case of social anxiety because at my new school, I was not accepted. I was bullied, I had to learn a whole new language by myself, and on top of that, I had to hear my grandmother on a regular basis tell my mother how my father had ruined me and how awful it was that I would often choose to go ahead and read my book rather than go out and play with the other kids. I saw how my mother was unable to stand up for me and how, still as a full-grown adult, she was paralyzed with fear of her own mother. I became a therapist because I saw how my mother's childhood had affected her and how my childhood experiences affected me. I became a therapist because growing up, I felt lonely and disconnected from the people who were closest to me, and I wanted my contribution to be that one of a healer. That if somebody decides that they don't want to pass on this dysfunction from one generation to another, I have prepared myself and I have the tools to help end this disintegration of families. Not long ago, I began to realize that many people believe that a diagnosis such as depression, PTSD, and anxiety are lifelong mental illnesses. I have people calling me up asking me if I can fill their prescription, and when I tell them no, but I can work on the reasons why you're on the prescription, I usually hear silence and a click. They hang up on me. Now, when we do an intake, we do look at the family history, and we may find that Auntie Lizzie and Uncle Jimmy and Pop were all anxious, and from that, it's really easy to make the assumption that, well, heck, it runs in the family, so I'm just going to run down to the doctor's office and get myself a prescription of Xanax. However, if we just take a few moments and scratch a little bit underneath the surface and look at the family dynamics, we may find that Dad was a raging alcoholic, and he became an alcoholic because he was molested by his uncle. Constantly walking around on eggshells like that is something that puts our nervous system to the test. We become anxious, and our brain gets wired to be in constant fight or flight. Our brains were designed that way in order to protect us, but when we get stuck in that, it no longer serves us. About 10 years ago, I came across this incredible modality called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It is a very particular and effective way of working with people, helping the brain realize that whatever it was that happened is no longer happening. With this modality, I have helped hundreds of people regain their lives, many times in as little as 3 to 6 sessions. People who had become pretty much recluse are now out driving around. Other people have been able to reconnect with family members, this time setting healthy boundaries so they don't get sucked back into toxic relationships. We can't change where we came from, but we can decide what we want to create from here on and out. I chose to make a change in my life and for me so that my son could feel close and connected. And there he is. So we have a choice. We can choose to remain in pain, or we can choose freedom. With EMDR, I have a tool that will help you regain peace so that you can create a whole new ripple effect. So I'm here to remind you also that it's not only the big-time obvious events that cause emotional damage. There was no point in time in my life that I was ever physically threatened, and yet I became cripplingly shy. Something that's taken me decades, trust me, to overcome. Being on the other side of all that is liberating and empowering. And with that, I'm here today to remind you that you are powerful beyond measure. What are you going to do with your power? Thank you.